chicken. I want one for my tea. Oh, I haven't had an egg since Easter, and now it's 3:30. So chicken. Lay a little egg for, lay a little egg for, lay a little egg for me.
Oh dear, what a morning this has been. Right, that's it, put the gun away, keep that fox out of the way. Anything. Lovely. Oh, look at that. Cup of tea there, waiting for me when I get in. Good morning everybody, hope you're all well. You have to excuse me, I'm gasping for a cup of splash. Can't beat it. So a cup of tea it is for me this morning. Little splash of milk there. Fresh from the cow, just a job. No sugar, but I've got a little bit of blackcurrant jam on some bread. Absolutely beautiful. Good morning and welcome to the Old Forge Wartime House first live interactive video of the day. As you know, currently there are a few problems here all over England, and as a consequence we're keeping you safe at home and we're bringing to you our virtual talks. And my talk today is about eggs. Our theme today is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Here's the basket and I've got most of my eggs in there. And we're going to talk to you, I'm going to talk to you about eggs and eggs in World War II in particular. Now, as you know, I'm sure most of you all know, that there was rationing in World War II, and at the start of World War II, eggs were not on the ration. They were freely available for those that could get hold of them. But by 1942, it was needed to ration the eggs, and consequently, eggs became scarcer around. And so what happened was we had in 1942, in about June, the introduction of the powdered egg, which was egg that you could reconstitute using water, and that was on the ration. You was entitled to about one tin, and that was about 12 eggs in volume, and it was made up for the month. Anyway, a person after 1942, an adult, if they were readily available, would be 1 egg per adult per week. Okay. Now, obviously there were restrictions. Times a year you couldn't get your eggs, but we're lucky here. We've got our own chickens on the farm, and they're laying quite well at the moment. And so what we do is we don't have our eggs on the ration. We have our own chickens, and we give up our egg ration to enable us to get layers mash from the government. We get an allowance for layers feed, which we can then feed to our chickens, in addition to which they scratch around on the grass, getting all the bits and pieces that they enjoy, all the peelings that we have, we boil up with the mash and we throw out there for them. They enjoy that. And so I'm going to talk to you about the eggs. Now, you've all had eggs in the past, I'm sure. It's a very simple product. There it is, that's an egg, that's a chicken egg, yeah? They come in various sizes, different colours, and different birds lay different coloured eggs, different chickens that is, lay different coloured eggs. And they also vary in size. Some of the Banty hens are very small. Your big Rhode Island Reds are a very nice, large, dark egg. Some of the chickens, like Leghorns, lay a whitey blue egg. Much paler blue than the duck eggs, but nonetheless it is a whitey blue colour. Light Sussex, again, a nice pale egg, but all very, very tasty. So how do you know your egg is fresh? Well, there are a few ways of telling that your egg is fresh, and the most tried and tested method that you're all probably aware of is water. Quite simply, get your egg and drop it into water. I'm showing you with my beer glass because you can see through it, but the egg sinks to the bottom in the beer glass. If it was to float slightly or stand on end, it means that some air has got inside the egg. Now, air gets into eggs through the shell because the shells have to absorb air or oxygen, so that as the chicks inside form, if they're a fertile egg, they are able to breathe just before they hatch, and then they break out and run around the farm, chip, 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 and grow bigger and bigger until the day that they start laying their own eggs, or you roast them on a Sunday. That choice is yours, of course. Anyway, so that's one way of checking your egg. If it's full of air, it will float to the top. It's pretty obvious, it's buoyant. Another way of checking your egg, quite simply, is to hold it to your ear and shake the egg. I can't hear anything, can you? No, that's good. If there was air inside, the contents inside, the yolk and the white, would rattle around. They get drier and they rattle around inside. And another way of checking your egg, and I've marked one of my eggs here with a little bit of black paint from out in the yard. This is an old method, is to spin your egg. And what you do, quite simply, and I'm going to show you, is you stack the eggs on top of one another, like so, and let go. And it spins round. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. I'll show you once more. There we go. Excuse me. It's always the same. I don't want to drop them because these eggs are worth a few bob at the moment. There we go. You can see that egg spins round slightly. Now, I know that method works because every egg I've ever cracked that's spun hasn't been rotten. And I was told that by an old farmer friend, so it's a good way. It's a good way of checking your eggs. Water's probably better. How can you preserve your eggs? How can you keep your eggs fresh for longer? Well, there are a few products on the market now in the wartime. One of them is a chemical element, which is called water glass. And the other one is Insaglass, which is made from a fish's bladder. Both are prepared in water, and when you've got them all prepared, they come out a bit like a wallpaper paste, a thin wallpaper paste. You then put your eggs into a pail, a bucket, which has little levels on it, wire levels. Put all your eggs on these different levels, pour the liquid inside, and it covers the eggs, thus preventing oxygen getting to the eggs. Why don't you use just water, I hear you say? Well, there is oxygen in water, and the thickness of this solution prevents it penetrating the egg as well. Okay, so that's what we do there. We can do that. Another way of preserving eggs that's been done for years is to coat the egg with an oil, a vegetable oil of some sort or an animal fat oil, and that preserves the eggs as well. The Chinese used to bury their eggs for a long, long time. Again, it prevented the air getting to them, and they became quite a delicacy, so we're told. I haven't tried one. So that's your eggs, and that's how you prepare your eggs. They're a valuable ingredient in cooking. They're very much needed by everybody. You like to have your food, and it's nothing nicer than a fried egg or a boiled egg in the morning with a little bit of bread dipped inside, maybe in the yolk. And oh, you'll have to excuse me, I'm really dry this morning. That's better. That's the thing, we're getting up early in the morning and running around after the hens. Anyhow, so that's a little bit about preserving eggs and checking your eggs. I hope you've enjoyed your little visit here today. We hope you have, and we wish you all well at this time, and we look after your welfare by keeping you at home, and we hope that you'll be able to come and visit us all again in the not too distant future. So all it leaves for me to say is, till we meet again, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from everyone else. Take care, look after yourselves. Cheerio.
Good afternoon, ladies. Today we're going to talk about making the best of what we have and making do without. Now, I know that some of us are really struggling to find eggs, and of course eggs are what most of our cooking involves the use of. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make your family a delicious cake. Now, I've got a farmhouse recipe for you today, which I'm sure you will enjoy. And it is a total egg-free cake, so that when you are out of not only your fresh eggs, as Mr. Nadine was talking to you about earlier, but even when your packet of dried eggs have run out as well. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we can't make items, because we have a very good substitute in eggs in our larders and our pantries anyway. I'm sure most of you have got bicarbonate of soda in your larder, your pantry, or like myself in my wonderful Easy Work cabinet. And of course that is an egg replacement. It gives the rising nature of eggs and the aerating of eggs without actually using your precious egg. Now, I've first of all taken 8 ounces of self-raising flour and given that a good sifting. Now, you can use your national wheatmeal flour, but of course you will have to add a couple of teaspoons of baking powder with every 8 ounces to turn it into self-raising. I'm now adding just 2 ounces of dripping. Now, 2 ounces to 8 ounces of flour is a very low fat ratio, and that is because I'm going to also in this cake add another ingredient which we do have an awful lot of, and like our hens and our eggs, we will find outside in the garden, and that of course is wonderful potato peat. Ladies, he is the best friend you can have in your kitchen, because he, like bicarbonate of soda, is also a replacement for that ingredient that we are short of as well, and that is of course the fat. Now, I've used just 2 ounces of dripping, which of course I have clarified from the meat that I cooked last weekend, but you can use any fat that you have in your larder, margarine or lard, or as I say, your dripping from your meat ration. Very easy to rub in lightly into that 8 ounces of flour. I'm now going back to good old potato peat. And what I would say to you is, whenever you're boiling potatoes, always do a little extra. Mash those potatoes without, of course, any butter or any milk, just plain boiled potatoes, and mash them as finely as you can, getting out as many of the lumps as possible. Then keep them in the larder. They'll stay good for a couple of days, because mashed potato is one of those ingredients that you need to use in so many other dishes to make the fat that you have go further. And I'm taking 4 ounces of cold, dry mashed potato, in other words, with no liquid adding. And I'm also going to now rub in the mashed potato into the flour and the dripping. Now, this won't combine totally, but that won't matter, because when you come to the final mix, that should ensure that the potato is evenly distributed amongst the cake mixture. Now, this potato is mixing in very well, actually. It does of course depend on the variety that you've got. I know some people at times complain bitterly about the mushiness of their potatoes, so try and choose a variety that gives you a good dry mash. And there we have so far your flour, your dripping and your mash. I'm now going to add some sugar, and just a small amount again of that precious ration that we've got. Excuse me while I just get another spoon. I'm only going to use 2 ounces of sugar, because the fruit that I'll be putting in our farmhouse cake. It's very sweet as well, and if you're using dried fruit in cakes, you can cut down on the amount of sugar that you're using. Now, this recipe also calls for a little spice, and I'm going to pop in about half a teaspoon of mixed ground spice. Give that a mix too. And I'm then going to add my fruit. Now, ladies, of course, with the points coupons at the moment, I'm sure that you've noticed that our dried fruit has different points value. Now, of course, our raisins, which are so hard to come by and have to be imported, they at the present time are 16 points per pound. However, dates are much lower, and it's these that I've used today. They're very sweet and they're only 12 points a pound at the present time, so saving you 4 points for every pound of dried fruit. If you did want to use prunes, of course you can do as well. They're even lower in points, so even a better bet, because of course they're home produced. Now, I've chopped the dates finely, and I'm going to sprinkle that in. Give it a mix up, and now we want to add the liquid. Now, I'm sure you'll look at this and think, but no egg, how can that be a delicious cake? Well, I've taken a teacupful of warm milk, and this is when we use the raising agent, which is half of a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And this will do all the job, perhaps without quite the richness, but will give the raising and the thickening agent that your usual egg would too. So stir in half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda into that teacup full of warm milk. Add gradually, stirring. Do this quickly, of course, because the warmth and the liquid will react very quickly with the bicarbonate, and you want to make the most of that and not waste that raising time. Give it a very good beat, and then we're going to turn that into a greased cake tin, and that's going to pop in the oven for about 1 to 1.5 hours. Keep an eye on it, ladies, and make sure your oven temperature is about a moderate oven. Pop that in, and hopefully after an hour and a half we will see what a delicious farmhouse cake for all the family we have made, and yet using none of our shell eggs or our national dried egg either. So just smooth the surface. You can put a little dent in the middle to try and prevent it doming too much, and then that's into the oven for about an hour, hour and a half. So we'll come back to that later, and we'll also show you the recipe so that you can make this at home. A lovely Easter eggless cake for you to try. Thank you. And it's about an hour now, and I can smell the cake. It smells delicious. That means that It's cooked. Oh, and look at that. Absolutely beautifully risen, slightly cracked, never mind. And I think I've put this in a 6-inch cake tin, and it probably could have done with the 7-inch one. But I'm going to leave that in the tin for 5 minutes to cool, then turn it onto a wire rack, and we're going to enjoy that later.
Hello everybody, this is Homeguard Andy on a Dig for Victory day at the Wartime house in Sittingbourne. As you know, we would normally be open this weekend, but as due to circumstances, we're not, and so I thought I'd give you a little tour of the garden, show you what's going on. Right, well there's plenty to do while I've been here. All the pots need watering, things have dried out quite a bit, but as you can see everything seems to be growing quite well. We've got some herbs over here, some growing, some in seedlings, and our other crops are growing quite well. So here in the garden we've got some potatoes. You can see some are already coming through, and I've planted another 2 rows to go today. And there's some rhubarb growing quite well. And as you've seen, some of our other crops growing quite well. Raspberries are coming on. I'm afraid the strawberries haven't overwintered very well, but I'm hoping they'll pick up later. Up here we've got the gooseberries, they're still growing nicely. And I've also put in a whole row of broad beans today, but I've kept them separate to the potatoes because they do seem to suffer from blight, so I've kept them well away from the other crops. Our grassed areas had a nice trim, so it was getting a bit long and untidy. And as we all like a bit of colour in the garden, I decided to spruce up this border, dig it over, plant it over with some nice primulas and a few violas. And as it was commonplace, apparently, to plant on top of your air raid shelter, I decided to spruce ours up with a few pansies, and a few odd violas as well, until something else better comes along to plant. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip around the garden, and hopefully we'll be open before long and everything back to normal, and you'll be able to come and see it from yourself. Thank you very much. See you soon.